Shocking, Meu Filho DOOU Meu CARRO para a Sogra e o QUEEU FALEI DEIXOU TODOS SEM PALAVRA. When the sun hit just right on the old blue Honda, it looked more like a lost relic than a reliable ride. But for Julia, it was a lifeline. She poured her heart into that car. It took her kids to school, brought her to work all those early mornings, and was the centerpiece of weekend adventures. So when she received the frantic call from her husband, Carlos, that made her stomach drop, she never expected the words that would follow. "I gave the Honda to my mom," he said. No hesitation, no explanation, just a bomb dropped like a stone in a still pond, rippling chaos through her life. It all felt surreal, like a bad reality show designed to rile people up. In that moment, her heart raced, and anger surged through her veins. The thought of how, just yesterday, they had laughed over dinner about the old car's quirks, now felt like a cruel joke. Wasn't it clear how hard she worked to keep their family afloat? And just like that, he handed the keys to his mother without a second thought. She could almost hear the whispers of their friends, the judgment simmering beneath their polite smiles. What would they think? As she stood in the kitchen, the walls closing in, disbelief mingled with rage. Her hand trembled as she gripped the counter, imagining her mother-in-law's smug expression, gliding around town in her Honda like royalty in a chariot. The thought made her want to scream. "What are you thinking?" she demanded to know, her voice strained but determined. The words echoed in her mind, but all she received was silence. The tension thickened like a fog, wrapping around her, squeezing tight, but even in that darkness, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was a chance to confront the underlying issues eating away at their lives. But just as she gathered her thoughts, Carlos texted her a simple emoji, a smirking face. Anger spiked hot in her chest. How dare he? It wasn't a game. It was her life. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With a deep breath, Julia plotted out her next move. It was time to reclaim what was hers. She needed to confront him, to lay it all bare. But would he listen? Or was this the beginning of a rift that might tear their family apart? The house felt heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tension, and she realized she had to act before the situation spiraled even further. With every impatient tick of the clock, doubt crept in. Did her husband even understand how this would shatter their world? The future felt uncertain, but one thing was clear: nothing would be the same again. What would happen next? Would Julia take a stand or let this go? Was her marriage hanging by a thread? In a world filled with secrets and betrayals, she braced herself for what lay ahead. Julia's heart hammered against her chest as she paced the floor, her mind racing through a storm of emotions. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second mocking her with the reminder that time was running out. In that tiny kitchen, the air felt thick. She could faintly hear children laughing outside, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing within the four walls of her home. Doubt clawed at her. Was confronting Carlos really the right move? The last time they had a serious conversation, it ended in shouting and tears. She could still feel that sting, like a fresh wound. But deeper inside, something urged her to push through the fear. This wasn't just about a car. It was about respect. It was about their family. Finally, she decided. She would not wait any longer. It was time to face him, to let him know how she truly felt. She grabbed her phone, trembling slightly, and texted Carlos, requesting he come home soon. His reply came almost instantly: "On my way." What's up? There was a casualness in his words that ignited her anger even more. Did he really think everything was fine? When the door finally opened, Julia stood at the ready. Carlos walked in, his casual demeanor only infuriating her more. He had no idea what chaos he had unleashed. "Julia?" he called, searching for her. She stepped out of the shadows, her heart racing, but her resolve firm. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady despite her rising fury. He raised an eyebrow, confusion mingled with irritation. "About what?" "The car?" The question hung in the air, heavy and threatening. "Yes, the car. How could you just give it away like that?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her calm facade. "What's the big deal?" "It's just a car," he shrugged, turning away as if not even worth a second thought. "Just a car?" she echoed, incredulous. "You have no idea how much it means to me. How much it meant for us as a family." His expression shifted, irritation growing. "I thought you'd be happy my mom has something to drive. She hasn't had a decent car for years." The shock of his words hit her like a physical blow. He truly didn't understand. "This isn't about your mother, Carlos. It's about us. Our needs. Our kids." He crossed his arms, the defensive posture only feeding her fire. "I didn't think you'd care that much. We can get another car." "Another car?" The outrage bubbled over now. "You really think that's the point? You think I can just let this slide? Do you even see me anymore? Or is it just your mom that matters?" The silence fell like a heavy curtain, both caught in an emotional tug-of-war. And then he did something unexpected. Carlos let out a frustrated sigh, his body language changing. "Maybe we need to talk about more than just the car, maybe about us?" Her heart paused. Did he realize? She studied his face, searching for any hint of sincerity. But the moment hung between them, thick and consuming. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed loudly. He glanced at the screen, his curiosity piqued. "Hold on, it's important." She watched as he read the message, and then his expression tightened. His lips pursed in disbelief. "What is it?" she pressed, sensing a twist of fate hanging in the balance. He looked up, the color draining from his face. "I need to go." It's about my mother. In that instant, the world tilted again, and Julia knew she had to brace herself for whatever storm was about to hit them next. Would it unravel everything, or could it lead to the confrontation she desperately needed? What new secrets lay hidden, waiting to break free? Julia felt a chilling sensation creep up her spine. The moment Carlos's eyes darted to his phone, she braced for the worst. "What do you mean it's about your mother?" The words slipped from her lips like ice shards, cutting through the thick tension in the room. Carlos's face revealed nothing at first, just shock and disbelief, but then a storm of emotions flashed across his features. I don't know how to explain this." He swallowed hard, the fight leaving his posture. "Try," she urged, her voice shaking from a mix of fear and impatience. "Is she okay?" He shook his head slowly. "No, it's worse than that. She's at the hospital. They say it's serious." Panic gripped Julia's heart. Memories of her own mother's last days flooded her mind, the endless hospital rooms, sterile smells, hushed conversations among nurses. "What happened?" "Car accident," Carlos said, his voice tight. "She was on her way to see us. A truck ran a red light." "They don't know," the words trailed off, and he gazed at the floor as if it held the answers. "What do you mean they don't know?" Julia's voice rose, a mixture of anger and disbelief, fighting against her instinct to comfort him. "This is just another one of your distractions, isn't it? You can't do this to me right now." Carlos looked up, hurt flashing in his eyes. "This is not about you. I need to go to her. She might need me." The other half of her was raw and exposed, realizing that the conversation about the car felt trivial compared to this news. "I get that, but what about us?" His eyes softened, and for a moment, she saw the man she fell in love with. "I'm scared, Julia. I can't lose her. Not now." But how could she focus on his mother when every word they had just exchanged about their own family felt like a chasm widening between them? "Carlos, please," she whispered, bringing her hands up to cup his face. "I can't bear this on my own. We need to handle this together." Together, he echoed, grappling with the weight of the situation. The anger in his eyes dulled to confusion, muddied by fear and uncertainty. They stood, staring at one another, and suddenly everything she felt about the car seemed insignificant. The looming crises altered the landscape of their argument, but left the other issues unresolved, like a dangerous storm still brewing in the distance. Carlos took a breath, trying to regain his composure. "I need to go. I can't just leave her." His voice wavered at the end, each word pushing at their fragile bond. Julia nodded, uncertainty swirling in her gut. "Okay, but take me with you. We can talk in the car. Please, we can't just ignore what has happened here." He hesitated, wrestling with the jumbled emotions swirling inside both of them. Finally, he relented, exhaustion etched into his face. "Okay, let us go." As they stepped outside, the laughter of children faded, replaced by the heavy atmosphere of night, distant sirens echoing like ominous whispers. Once in the car, tension thickened the air. Julia's mind raced ahead of them, a million thoughts colliding. How would they confront Carlos's mother's condition together? Would this be the moment of awakening they so desperately needed? But what she didn't know was that the real storm was just beginning. A new wave of secrets awaited them at the hospital, threatening to unravel everything they thought they knew about their family ties. What new horrors would they face? The car hummed along the pavement, each of Julia's heartbeats synchronized with the rhythm of the engine, a chilling reminder of the urgency swirling around them. Every silence spoke volumes, twisting like ropes around her throat. Carlos's knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel, lost in thought or perhaps grappling with the weight of fear. "Do you think she'll be okay?" Julia's voice cut through the heavy air, barely above a whisper, but it felt like the shout of a siren in the stillness. Carlos's eyes flickered toward her, pain mixed with uncertainty clouding his expression. "I don't know, I can't think like that right now." He cleared his throat, a shaky sound that sent shivers of anxiety coursing through Julia. "I just have to get there." The streets blurred past them, shadows dancing under the dim streetlights. Every corner turned brought them closer, yet Julia felt a chasm opening deeper within. A soft pit of dread nestled in her stomach, a dark sense that something else lingered just beneath the surface of this tragedy. What if things were worse than they seemed? What if the secrets Carlos carried weren't just about his mother? Fragments of doubt had taken root in her mind, memories of suppressed arguments, half-heard conversations, and that chilling day when his phone rang repeatedly during dinner, his face a mask of worry. "Carlos, talk to me," she urged. "What else is going on? This feels bigger than just your mom." He flinched at her words, tightening his grip on the wheel. "There's nothing else, Julia. Just drive." His tone cut sharply, and Julia's heart sank. Anger flared momentarily, igniting a spark of defiance. "I'm not just riding along in silence. I'm here for you. I want to help." But her words met only cold silence and the familiar weight of Carlos's secrets. The hospital loomed closer, its sterile lights flickering like weak stars against the oppressive dark. When they arrived, the place was a symphony of chaos. Whispers darted between nurses, flashes of concern painted across the faces of visitors pacing the lobby like restless spirits. Julia felt her stomach twist tighter, nearing a knot as they walked toward the entrance. "Wait!" Carlos halted abruptly, causing Julia to bump into him. "What?" She looked up, confusion steeped in her anxiety. "That's her doctor." He pointed toward a tall man in a white coat, deep in conversation with a nurse. "I need to talk to him." "You stay here." "No way," Julia shot back, her resolve sharpening. "I'm coming with you. We're facing this together." He hesitated but finally nodded, the fear in his eyes almost breaking her heart. They moved as one, weaving through the huddle of anxious faces and sterile odors, a rush of tension swirling around them. As they approached, the doctor glanced up, an unreadable expression flooding his face. "You're here for Mrs. Martinez?" he asked, voice steady but laced with that haunting undertone of unease. Yes, that's my mother, Carlos replied, his voice cracking like ice underfoot. The doctor's eyes darted between them, assessing, weighing. Can we talk? The words felt like a lead weight, heavy and ominous. Julia stilled, the dread growing thick in her throat. She could sense it. Something about this man, this moment, in this hospital, was steering them into uncharted waters. Hey, is she? Carlos started, but the doctor lifted a hand, his silence carving a path forward. Before they could step aside into the muted corners of the yard, Julia caught the whisper of a name slipping through the doctor's lips. The accident wasn't what it seemed. Her pulse quickened, each beat a drum of dread echoing in her ears. What did that mean? What truth lay buried beneath the surface? As Carlos turned, confusion painted across his features, Julia felt a surge of determination. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. But the question loomed: was the truth about to tear them apart? And with that, the door swung open to revelations unforeseen, shaking the very foundation of their reality. Julia's heart raced as she caught the doctor's words, but she couldn't allow fear to seize her. What do you mean the accident wasn't what it seemed? She demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. Carlos's eyes widened, panic flaring. Please, just tell us what happened, he said, desperation tainting his tone. The doctor glanced back, his brow knit with worry. Let us step outside. It's better this way. They followed him into a small waiting area, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, intensifying an already fraught atmosphere. Julia could feel the unease wrapping around them like a heavy blanket. First, let me express my deepest sympathies for your family, the doctor began, then hesitated, searching for the right words. Your mother was in an accident, yes, but things didn't align as they should have. What are you saying? Carlos pressed, each syllable sharp with fear, his gaze steady on the doctor. Witnesses reported a different sequence of events. Your mother's car was rear-ended by another vehicle, but it appears, it may have been intentional. A cold wave of disbelief washed over Julia. Intentional? What do you mean? Who would want to hurt her? The doctor interrupted, tightening his lips, scanning the area before continuing. That's the question we need to answer. There's evidence suggesting foul play. It's a delicate situation, one that may lead to more than just an accident report. Carlos turned pale, shock layering over his features. Julia reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly, trying to pull the pieces back together in a storm of emotions. We need to find out who did this, she whispered fiercely, more to herself than to him. Your mother's condition is stable for now, the doctor advised, but I need you both to be cautious. If someone targeted her, they might not be finished yet. The words felt like ice in Julia's veins. Cautious how? Stay low. Notify the police if anything feels off. Notify the police? Carlos echoed softly, disbelief flooding his voice. We need more than that. We need answers. The investigation is ongoing, the doctor reassured them, his tone softer now. I assure you, we will do everything in our power. But understand, this is going to be complicated. Julia felt her stomach twist, a storm of adrenaline and fear waging war inside her. Everything was spiraling out of control. What if it leads back to you? The words flew out before she could stop them, and she immediately felt the weight of her accusation. Carlos shot her a shocked look, but the doctor raised a hand, eyes steady. I assure you, I have no part in this. My only concern is your mother's well-being. But it's clear there are hidden connections here, possibly involving people you both know. The walls closed in, the sterile air of the waiting area grew heavier. Julia's mind raced alongside the mounting dread. You mean someone we know could be involved? He didn't answer immediately, allowing the question to sink in, dragging Julia into a swirling pit of anxiety. We need time, he said finally. Keep your guard up. Look for anything unusual. They stepped back outside, the hospital lobby teeming with strangers yet feeling eerily empty to Julia. She stole a glance at Carlos, uncertainty brewed like a persistent storm cloud, and she recognized his turmoil as her own. "We can't let this destroy us," she said, voice trembling as the stakes hit her full force. "We need to connect the dots, find out who could want to hurt your mom." Carlos looked at her, desperation morphing into resolve. "You're right. We can't back down." As they walked toward the exit, Julia felt a cold chill cross her skin, a creeping sense that they had just cracked open a door leading to something dark and dangerous. An unsettling thought loomed in her mind: what if getting answers would expose secrets best left buried? Uncertainty shadowed their every step, but the truth loomed larger. Would they be able to face it? What if digging deeper brought more danger to their door? They stepped into the night, the weight of what lay ahead heavy on them. And just then, Julia's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. A message blinked on the screen, one that could change absolutely everything. Julia's heart pounded as she fished her phone from her pocket. The screen glowed ominously in the dim light, her breath catching in her throat. The message read, "I know what happened. Meet me at the old garage. 10 p.m. Don't tell anyone." Carlos peered over her shoulder, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice low, as if the answer might unleash something terrible. "I don't know," Julia whispered, unable to tear her eyes away from the screen. An urgency surged through her, battling against the fear gnawing at the edges of her mind. "Should we go?" "We can't, not without knowing more," Carlos replied, but Julia could see the flicker of intrigue sparking in his eyes, mirroring her own thrill mixed with dread. "Maybe it's a lead," she countered, clinging to the last shred of hope. "Someone knows more about the accident. We need to find out if it ties back to who wanted to hurt Mom." Carlos hesitated, glancing around as if expecting to see hidden eyes tracking their every move. "All right, but we need a plan. We can't just walk into a trap." Glancing back at the hospital, Julia feared the shadows lurking in every corner. What if this is the only chance we get? We can't waste time." Carlos sighed, inhaling deeply like he was steeling himself against the coming storm. "Fine. But we stick together. No splitting up." They took a moment to gather their thoughts, bracing themselves for what lay ahead. The chill of the night air pressed against them as they hurried to Carlos's car. The engine roared to life, cutting through the tense silence between them. Julia's mind raced, and with every street they passed, the creeping feeling of danger grew. What if it's a setup? Carlos mused, eyes darting to the rearview mirror. What if someone knows we're investigating? We can't let that stop us. We need answers, Julia affirmed, feeling the weight of her conviction in her bones as they pulled up to the rundown garage situated on the outskirts of town. The flickering neon sign above cast an eerie glow, like a spotlight on a stage set for a horror show. They exchanged a look filled with trepidation before stepping out into the night. Each crunch of gravel underfoot echoed like a heartbeat in the heavy silence. The place looked deserted, yet every shadow seemed alive, waiting to spring to life. "Stay close," Carlos murmured, glancing toward the darkened entrance of the garage. Julia nodded but felt the pounding of her pulse surge as the message flashed in her mind. This could be the moment that held the answer they were desperate for, or it could lead them into something far more sinister. "Hello?" Julia called, steeling her voice against the creeping doubt. The sound of her own voice reverberated, but no response came. Carlos moved ahead cautiously, peering into the darkness. "Maybe it's a trap after all," he whispered. "Or maybe—" Julia started, but she never finished her sentence. A sound came from deep within the shadows, an unmistakable shuffling, followed by a low murmur. "Did you hear that?" Carlos froze, every muscle tensed. Before Julia could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows, and the dim light illuminated their face. Someone she recognized. "Julia." "Carlos," the figure said, panic dancing in their eyes, "you shouldn't be here. They're coming." A chill gripped Julia's heart as she stared into the person's face, her pulse racing. "What do you mean?" she gasped. Who's coming?" But before the figure could answer, the screech of tires pierced the night, followed by the jarring sound of a door slamming shut outside. They weren't alone anymore. Fear clenched at Julia's throat, her stomach twisting into knots. Could they hide in time? Would they uncover the truth, or would this night seal their fate? The moment hung in the air, thick with uncertainty and danger. The muddy waters of betrayal loomed, and the next move could change everything. And just then, a flashlight beam sliced through the dark, locking onto them like a predator honing in on its prey. The beam of light flickered and danced, illuminating the tense faces of Julia, Carlos, and their unexpected companion. It felt like an eternity as they stood frozen, caught in a trap of their own making. The figure their friend stepped closer, fear plastered across their features. "Run," they whispered urgently, glancing toward the entrance. "They're not far behind." Julia's stomach dropped. "Who? What's going on?" Her voice trembled, straining against the weight of unanswered questions and the suffocating fear surrounding them. A loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots pounding against concrete. Time seemed to stretch as Carlos grabbed Julia's wrist, pulling her toward the darkened recesses of the garage. "Come on," he urged, guiding them into the shadows just as the light flickered again, searching the edges of the space. Julia could feel her heart racing, each thud echoing like a distant drum signaling danger. "You need to tell us who's coming," she yelled, almost desperate now. "James, he's involved." "He knows," their friend stammered, eyes wide with panic. "Everything you think you know?" "It's worse." Julia's mind spun. James, her childhood friend, had always seemed harmless, but she recalled late-night conversations laced with hints of jealousy and grudges simmering beneath the surface. "Why?" Carlos interrupted sharply. "Why are they after us?" "Because of what you saw that night at the lake," their friend whispered, urgency lacing every word. "It's not just an accident. It's a cover-up." The words crashed over Julia like a wave, consuming her with confusion and disbelief. "What do you mean? What cover-up?" Before the figure could answer, the door kicked open, splintering the silence. A group of shadowy figures spilled inside, led by a tall man whose face Julia couldn't make out. He stood there, scanning the garage with predatory eyes, his presence an ominous cloud hanging over them. "Search everywhere," he commanded, voice deep and menacing. "They can't get away this time." Panic surged inside Julia as she realized how close they were to being caught. "We have to move," she hissed, scanning the area for an escape route. Carlos pushed her behind a stack of old tires, and the three of them pressed against the cold metal. Julia could hear the footsteps growing louder, the thud of boots against the cement sending jolts of fear through her body. "Do you trust me?" Carlos whispered, their eyes locking. She nodded, every nerve ending alive with urgency. "What's the plan?" He raised a finger to his lips, signaling for silence, then pointed toward a window high above, its glass dusty and broken. "We can climb it." With her heart racing, Julia nodded, and they pressed together to form a small unit, slipping low through the dark. With every inch they crawled, the looming figures grew more defined, their harsh voices reverberating around them. "Where are they?" The leader spat, frustration evident. As they approached the window, a cold breeze swept through, carrying the scent of rust and despair. One slip, one moment of noise could expose them. "On three," Carlos said, breathless. Julia sucked in a tight breath, her heart racing. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. 1, 2 suddenly, shouts erupted behind them. "They went this way." She didn't dare glance back. "Now." They launched upward, the adrenaline pushing them past fear, and in that moment, nothing mattered but escape. The glass crunched beneath their feet as they squeezed through the window, tumbling onto the cool grass outside. But they were not safe yet. As Julia got to her feet, her body thrumming with tension, Carlos pulled her into a low crouch. "We need to run. There's no turning back." But as they moved stealthily away from the garage, a chilling realization struck Julia like a lightning bolt. Someone was watching. She turned just in time to see a dark figure lurking at the edge of the trees, and it wasn't James. Panic surged again. "Carlos, we need to," but it was too late. A voice, smooth and low, echoed through the night. You really thought you could escape? Julia's blood ran cold. With a sinking feeling in her chest, she faced the figure stepping from the shadows, and a chilling recognition washed over her. Now they had no choice but to confront the very horror they had been running from. The figure stepped into the pale moonlight, revealing a face Julia recognized all too well. It was Mark, her former neighbor and antagonist in childhood. His signature smirk twisted her stomach, invoking a rush of memories filled with taunts and pranks. But this time, there was something darker behind those eyes, malice and a twisted satisfaction. Mark? Julia gasped, incredulity palpable in her voice. What are you doing here? Nice to see you too, Julia, he drawled, taking a slow step forward. I've always enjoyed a good game of hide and seek. Just didn't expect you to play along with such enthusiasm. Stay back. Carlos shouted, stepping forward protectively, but Julia could sense the thin veneer of confidence breaking in his voice. Mark chuckled, eyes glinting maliciously. Oh, you three really don't understand the danger you're in, do you? He gestured dismissively towards the tree line where shadows shifted. I only followed the noise. But now that I've found you, let's just say you're in deeper trouble than you think. What are you talking about? Julia said, her voice rising with anger and confusion. This is insane. You don't have to do this. Don't I? Mark stepped closer, his tone now conspiratorial, laced with menace. You think I'm the bad guy here? You think this is personal? He laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. It's business, sweetheart. And you're tangled in a web you can't even begin to comprehend. The shadows shifted again, and Julia felt dread creeping upon her. It wasn't just Mark they had to worry about. The group from the garage was still out there, potentially closing in on them. What do you want? Carlos demanded, a quiver in his voice that betrayed his bravado. With you three? Mark leaned in, an unsettling grin flashing across his face. Nothing but to keep the status quo, to keep you from revealing the truth about what really happened that night at the lake. A cold gust swept through the air, chilling Julia to the bone. Memories of that night rushed back, the screams, the chaos, the aftermath. We didn't see anything, she protested, but it felt hollow, desperate. Didn't you? Mark retorted, stepping back now, letting the tension hang thick in the air. You saw something, and now you think you can run away from it? No. I can't let you escape. Suddenly, the noise of rapid footsteps erupted from behind them, the shadows converging like a dark storm. Julia's instincts kicked in. We have to run. She shouted, grabbing Carlos's arm, pulling him into the thicket. Wait. Their friend shouted, but Julia couldn't stop. Trust me. She urged, fear driving her forward. Branches whipped against their faces as they sprinted into the dense woods, each step echoing the hastening rhythm of their hearts. I can't breathe, Carlos gasped, struggling to keep up as they dove deeper into the underbrush. A loud crash came from behind. Someone had stumbled, but the voices were closer now. Julia dared a glance back and saw shadows darting between the trees. Mark and his friends were hot on their trail, relentless and hungry for revenge. The panic surged anew, swallowing her thoughts like a wave. As they pushed forward, adrenaline guided Julia's movements, instinct taking over. They ducked low beneath a thick patch of leaves, desperately trying to silence their breaths. Their eyes quickly adjusted to the darkness, and for a moment, they were just three kids playing a game of hide-and-seek again. But the stakes were infinitely higher, and it felt as if the forest itself was closing in around them, each whisper of wind a reminder of the danger lurking close by. Where do we go from here? Carlos whispered, panic visible in his eyes. I don't know, but we can't stay here. The sounds of their pursuers grew louder, almost overwhelming, and as Julia's heart raced in her chest, the gravity of their situation settled in. Before she could voice another thought, a sharp, bright beam of light pierced through the blackness, illuminating their hiding spot and leaving them utterly exposed. Found you, a cold voice called out, echoing through the trees. As the shadows closed in like wolves on their prey, Julia faced the growing darkness, knowing they were out of time, yet somehow feeling the weight of an unspeakable truth hovering just out of reach. What would they have to sacrifice to finally uncover the secret surrounding that fateful night? The flashlight beam flickered, bouncing off the trees and illuminating their frightened faces. Julia's heart pounded, the sound ringing in her ears. Mark was just inches away now, his smirk widening as he saw the desperate glint in her eyes. "Look at you, so scared," he teased, stepping forward. "It's charming, really. Almost makes me reconsider." "But only for a second," he added, dark satisfaction coloring his voice. Julia's instinct screamed at her to bolt, but the weight of dread clamped down on her legs. Carlos, breathing heavily beside her, glanced at her, terror etched on his features. "What do we do?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Just stay calm." "We'll find a way to," she started, but Mark interrupted her. "You think you can just slip away?" Mark took another step closer, the forest swallowing the distance between them. The light from his flashlight revealed shadows creeping in behind him, figures emerging from the dark trees. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm her, Julia summoned a surge of defiance. "We saw nothing. We're not afraid of you," she shouted, clenching her fists, her voice resonating in the silent night. Mark's laughter echoed through the trees, a low, chilling sound. "Did you just try to scare me? Cute." He moved away from the light, drawing closer to the tree line. Julia could barely make out the other figures, two of Mark's friends, their eyes glinting with eager malice. "Julia, we have to," Carlos began, but Julia cut him off, her mind racing. She remembered the old cabin nearby, long abandoned but still standing. They could hide there, barricade the door, buy some time. "Follow me," she urged, adrenaline bursting through her veins. The three of them darted silently through the leaves, running low against the ground. Behind them, Mark shouted orders at his friends, their footsteps crashing through the underbrush like a war drum. They skidded to a halt in front of the dilapidated cabin, its weathered walls seeming to breathe as moonlight bounced off the broken windows. "In," Julia urged them as she shoved the creaky door open, praying it wouldn't betray them with a loud creak. They piled inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. "We should barricade it," Carlos panted as they rushed to the door. Julia grabbed some old wooden crates, dragging them across the entrance while Carlos pushed a heavy barrel against it. "Do you think it'll hold them?" Carlos's voice trembled as they huddled together in the gloom. Julia's mind raced. "I don't know. But we have to figure out what to do next. They'll find us if we don't think smart." She pressed her back against the door, listening to the rustle outside. The whispers grew louder, Mark's voice a constant background hum. "Did you hear that?" Julia whispered. Carlos nodded, eyes wide. "Yeah, they're coming. What do they want from us?" Before she could answer, a sudden crash resonated through the cabin, shaking the floorboards beneath them. The door rattled violently against the barricades, splinters dancing in the air. Mark's laughter rang out again, a sound both cruel and triumphant. "You can't hide forever, Julia. The truth will always come out. You think you're smarter than me? You're just prolonging the inevitable." Julia felt the walls of fear closing in, her thoughts racing. What truth? What did he know? The urgency quickened her pulse. Tears of frustration pricked at her eyes as a wave of helplessness crashed over her. "Julia, the window," Carlos urged suddenly, pointing to the dusty panes above the old sink. Julia turned, heart racing. They needed to signal for help, to make a plan, but just as they approached the window, the door flew open, and Mark burst through, his silhouette framed by the moonlight, ready to reclaim whatever twisted game he thought he had been winning. "Game over," he sneered, and behind him loomed figures cloaked in darkness, turning the cabin into a cage. As Julia's breath hitched in her throat, she realized this battle was about more than survival. It was about unearthing a long-buried truth. And that truth, waiting in the shadows, would change everything. What hidden sins lingered in those woods? What would they have to unearth to free themselves from Mark's grip? The air felt electric as Julia stood frozen, dread pooling in her stomach like a heavy stone. Mark's laughter echoed, sinister and playful, as if he thrived on the horror he inflicted. Behind him, the shadows deepened, revealing faces she couldn't see. But the threat hung heavy in the air, swallowing any flicker of hope that had dared to survive. "Julia, we need to keep moving," Carlos hissed urgently, pulling her back. But there was nowhere to go. She could feel the weight of their reality crashing in like waves against a dam ready to break. "What about the truth?" she murmured, hardly recognizing her own voice. "What are they hiding?" Mark stepped further inside, reveling in their fear. "You really want to know?" he taunted, his eyes gleaming with cruel delight. "You think diving into the past will save you?" Instantly, the room felt smaller, the walls pushing in as dread wrapped around Julia's chest, tightening like a vice. "Tell us what you know," she shouted, her voice surging with desperation, fighting against the feelings of helplessness. "Oh, but the truth is a slippery thing." Mark leaned closer, his face shadowed but the malice behind it undeniably clear. "It slips right through your fingers when you're desperate for it." With each word, his breath smelled of smoke and deceit, and Julia felt something inside her begin to crack. "Listen to me," Carlos said, more forceful now, stepping forward. "You think this is a game? You think we're your pawns? We know about the accident, we saw something." The fierce determination in Carlos's voice ignited a spark in Julia's chest, unearthing her own buried courage. Mark's grin faltered briefly, surprise flickering across his face. "The accident? There's more to that night than you think. It's not just about your mother." His eyes narrowed, scanning their expressions, one corner of his mouth twitching with what could only be excitement. Julia's heart raced. What was lurking beneath those words? You shouldn't have come poking around. The ground beneath her feet felt uncertain, threatening to crumble. "What are you saying?" Julia pressed, emboldened by Carlos's bravado. "What exactly do you know?" Mark shifted, the darkness of the cabin swallowing his silhouette. "That night it wasn't an accident, Julia. Your mother wasn't just in the wrong place. She was targeted." A bolt of ice shot through Julia's veins. Targeted? By who? Panic began to cloud her thoughts, intertwining with adrenaline. There was no way Mark was telling the truth. He had twisted their lives enough already. But before he could answer, the crack of splintering wood echoed from the door. Julia's heart raced, and suddenly, Carlos grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the window. "We need to get out of here." Just as they pivoted, another figure rushed inside their friend, eyes wide and frantic. "We've gotta go now. They're not far behind." "Mark knows something," Julia shouted, but there wasn't time for deliberation. "Let us move." Carlos followed, urging Julia out of the window, the rough edges of the frame scratching at her arms. They scrambled outside into the cool night, the darkness a shroud covering their hurried escape. As they hit the grass, Carlos's grip on Julia tightened, urging her to run toward the woods. "Where do we go?" Julia gasped, each breath felt sharp against the rushing wind. "Back to the hospital," he replied urgently, panic and adrenaline fusing every word. "They might have answers." Without looking back, they sprinted, hearts thrumming in unison, consuming everything around them. But uncertainty hung heavy. What if Mark was telling the truth? What if Carlos's mother's accident wasn't a complete accident? The night air bit at her skin, chilling every thought that flickered through her mind. As they reached the edge of the trees, a distant noise called out. Someone was shouting in pursuit, hungry for revenge, for truth, for silence. But Julia could feel the embers of determination ignite inside her. "We won't let it end like this," she pledged, dragging Carlos with her deeper into the woods, weaving through the trees like a desperate dance. After what felt like an eternity, when the sounds of pursuit faded into the background, they stumbled into the clearing near the hospital entrance, gasping for air. It was then that Julia's mind began to race with possibilities. If Mark knows something, maybe the doctor does too, she realized. "Do you really want to confront him?" Carlos's brow furrowed, uncertainty flickering in his eyes amid the urgency of their moment. Yes, she exclaimed, fists clenched. We have no choice. If there is a connection, if your mom was targeted, we have to expose it. Determination surged as they moved toward the eerie hospital lights flickering ahead, the harsh fluorescent glow stark against the night. Julia felt every heartbeat urge her feet forward, driven by a mix of fear, culpability, and intense desire for the truth. They burst through the doors, the scent of disinfectant piercing their senses. The waiting room stood eerily quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The air felt taut, heavy with the weight of everything unspoken. Let us find the doctor, Julia whispered, determination lining every syllable. They navigated through the hallways until they finally approached the nurse's station. Breathless, she caught the gaze of a familiar face, the doctor, exhausted but focused, scribbling notes. Without warning, Julia marched toward him, her heart pounding but newfound courage bursting forth. Doctor, we need to talk. He lifted his head, surprise washing over him. Julia? Carlos? Is everything all right? No, everything is not all right, she said vehemently, urgency crackling in her voice. Your investigation, it could lead back to something worse. Your secrecy is endangering lives. Let us go somewhere private, the doctor said, a glimpse of wariness shadowing his face. They followed him to a dimly lit room, the walls echoing the silence around them like a witness to their fears. Once inside, Julia wasted no time. We heard something shocking. Mark is involved. He said your investigation isn't tied to just the accident. The doctor's expression fell, color draining from his face. Mark, how is he involved? As Julia started revealing everything she knew, the accident, the threats, the shadowy fears looming over them, she could see the doctor's facade slowly cracking. He understood. He had to understand. I can't reveal everything yet, he murmured, but the urgency in Julia's voice left no room for doubt. My hands are tied due to an ongoing investigation. The circumstances surrounding the accident had darker undertones. Then help us, Carlos pleaded, desperation palpable. Mark is dangerous, and we need your help to expose him. The doctor took a deep breath, stepping closer, urgency flooding his tone. There is much at stake, but if what you say is true, then we need to act fast. There may be secrets buried deeper than we anticipated, ones that could change everything about this case. We'll need solid evidence and a plan. Hope surged anew in Julia's chest, the taste of it rich and tantalizing. We can find that evidence. Then we need to divide and conquer, he said, determination igniting in surprising places. We'll need to investigate Mark's background, understand the connections, find out exactly what happened that night at the lake. A newfound sense of purpose settled around them, and Julia felt the cracks in her world starting to mend, but it would take unity to piece it all together. Let us get started, she said, fierce and steady, ready to uncover whatever shadows lay ahead, prepared to challenge the truth, no matter what it might cost them. Because whatever lay in those shadows, the answers, the risks, the danger, it had become clear that only together could they face whatever darkness lingered, chasing it back into the void of the past. Together, they would fight to reclaim not just their lives, but the truth that had been hidden for far too long. And as they stepped into the darkness of the unknown, hope and courage intertwined, a beacon of resilience, ready to shine even brighter amid the lurking horrors yet to be unveiled. If you resonate with Julia and Carlos's relentless quest for truth, subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss our exciting next chapter. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm's fire. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what is to come, and share this story with at least 5 friends who need some thrilling inspiration. You need to show your support, because every moment counts in this gripping journey. Don't wait even one more second, join us.